Bob, welcome back to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Michelle. As I was last time, I'm honored to be here.
I'm really excited. I didn't tell you this, we were off camera talking, but your episode is still the number one listened to episode that we've had in almost 3 years now.
Well, that makes me very happy to
Yeah.
hear. Thank you for sharing.
We were looking at the analytics the other day and I was like, oh my gosh, look at that. Like Bob was number one still.
All
So
right.
there you go. So it's nice to have you back. You are
Yes.
the co-owner of WhizBang, and you guys have been doing all these amazing events and your social media and all the marketing that you do. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself and WhizBang.
Sure. So, WhizBang Retail Training, after a 19-year career as an independent brick and mortar retailer, I owned a chain of kite stores. My wife, Susan, who has a department store background, and she worked for us at the Mackinac Kite Company also. We started WhizBang Training, and we do events. We have products. Our two flagship products are the Retail Mastery System and our online sales training platform, the Retail Sales Academy. We do, as you mentioned, the Retail Success Summit. This is coming up in a couple weeks here. It's our 18th summit. So, I mean, every day we come to work and say, what can we do to help retailers? And it's our passion. It's what we love. We believe that the future of independent retail is so bright, and the impact that your listeners have on the world is so commendable. So that's who we are and what we do. Oh, I forgot to mention the biggest thing we have going on right now is we have, over the last 3 years, we have created an online educational platform called Brilliance, retailbrilliance.com.
Hmm.
And what is happening, and the goal, the vision, is for an independent retailer to be able to get all of their education all in one place. So if you start a store, you can go to Brilliance and find anything you need. So it's filled with courses by retail experts. Brands are starting to put their courses on Brilliance for product training. Of
Hmm.
course, that's where we have our training. So, yeah, lots going on here, but it's all about the retailer.
So do you have two different, you have Brilliance, and then do you have, because I watch your marketing and I watch
Yeah.
videos. So do you have different educational platforms that other than the Brilliance, but what else do you, what
So
do you
yeah,
offer?
so it's a great question, and it's confusing to everyone. And so what this is, the marketing of that is one of the things that we're sussing out right now. But Brilliance is the platform. So, like, for instance, our Retail Mastery System, our Retail Sales Academy, they are all housed on Brilliance. So if you invest in the Retail Mastery System, when you go to learn, to get into it, to take those courses, you would go on to Brilliance.
Ah,
Brilliance is the platform where it lives, the courses, and then we're bringing in lots of other educational opportunities for retailers to live on
I think
Brilliance.
you need a merchandiser.
Yes. Well, it's so interesting
Shameless
because
plug
as,
for
as I
myself.
was saying that, Michelle, I'm going, Michelle should have a course on Brilliance. So we'll talk about that later.
Because I think retailers don't have a lot of places. I don't think, I know retailers don't have a lot of places to learn. And it's funny because the more and more TikToks I'm doing on visuals, it's incredible to see how many people are reaching out that, like, even the simplest things, like I didn't even think about that. And it's like, I guess just from being in the industry, because I've been in retail for 45 years, and I guess being in the industry this long, you kind of just assume everyone knows this. Like, why, what? And it's funny, you forget, like like every single day, hundreds of people dip their toe into retail, whether it's a pop-up shop or a brick and mortar or online. And where do they go for the tools?
Yeah, well, and so you had a real start, right? Because you worked for Fred Siegel, is that correct?
I had 3 stores in the Fred Siegel complex. He was my
Okay.
mentor. So
Oh, I see.
I was
Okay.
owner with him as my mentor, and then thank you Northridge earthquake that took me
Yeah.
out, and then I was with Anthropology leading the visual merchandising for the Santa Monica store, and then store openings after for I think about 8 years.
But when you opened your three stores, did you have retail experience before that?
I all the what happens with Fred's is that you rarely go in is like I'm going to open a store and just show up and open your own store.
Right.
Most of us who started at Fred Siegel started the ground up. So I has always have always been in retail, but when I applied for a temporary position in the sale for the sale. They have once a year.
Right.
And they kept me on. And Fred is very smart. Fred was very smart. He would watch your drive and he would watch your initiative,
Right.
watch you and all the rules. There was a ton of rules, like no gum chewing. Like it was a lot of us talk about the trauma we had from that, but it created the strongest merchants. And,
Right.
I went from, being temporary help to an assistant manager to a manager to a buyer. And then when they opened Fred Siegel Fredbear Ecology across from the street of the building I was in, they came to me, Michael, my old boss, and Fred, his partner, came to me and said, "Okay, here's your opportunity." But
Right.
most people that have been there, Fred kind of watches and then will pull you aside quietly and say, "Look, I've been watching you. You've stepped up, you've done X, Y, and Z. You've been here, you've had the passion, and you're kind of given a store in a sense, like, and
Yeah,
that's
that's but
so it's
that
great training."
your experience is so totally different than the experience of most people. I
Mhm.
mean, my story was I was 23 years old. I had just graduated from college. I loved kite flying. Therefore, I should open a kite store because how hard can it be to run a retail store? To your point. And I remember, so I met my wife, Susan, who is my partner here at WhizBang Retail Training. And, she worked for Bloomingdale's, Macy's, Lord and Taylor. And I remember looking at her one day and going, oh my goodness, somebody actually trained her, taught her how to be a retailer.
Yeah.
But, when you look at, the people, your listeners, or when we look at the people in our community, most people who have a passion for their product, right? The woman who loves to dress opens a boutique. The bike rider opens a bike store,
Yeah.
and they don't have that training. And now, 20 years ago, you had the time to learn on the fly.
Yeah.
Now with social media, if you're not pretty good out of the gate, you're going to suffer pretty badly because you're going to get bad reviews. This idea of expectations are up and loyalty is down is very, very true. And so if you don't have the skills, it's hard to be successful. And that's really why we created Brilliance. And it's been a big project creating a software platform, but that's really why we did it. Because to your point, merchants, especially new merchants, need training. And it's more than just what we teach in the retail mastery system, which is sort of that tactical, this is how you buy, this is how you merchandise, this is how you market. There's also like courses on how to run a family business, how to buy insurance. So one of our Platinum
Yeah.
Mastermind group members made a course on how to do gift wrapping in your store. All of this little things, as
Yeah,
a
you
retailer.
take that for granted. Like I'm not even thinking that. Do you have, because the one thing I've had the most challenge of trying to find somebody to talk to retailers that retailers don't have access to is loss prevention. And
Yes.
when I was at Anthro, Z Gallery, like all those places, they had an in-house LP person that came in,
Yeah.
taught like you how to handle things because I think that retailers like there's the crash and whatever people that come in running in. I don't think that's the norm for most of
Oh,
retailers, but for the everyday housewife who lifts things and the kids that come in crowds after high school that lift things, like I don't think retailers know how to even, they don't know you can't even touch them. Like, hey, excuse me,
yeah.
can't ask to look in their purse. Like there's so many, and I'm sure every single state has a different law.
And so there is a course on that.
I
And
love
not
that.
only is it that there's a course on that, but it was very interesting when I watched the course and when I interviewed the guy. I'm sorry, but I don't even remember his name. But it was not only, it was about protecting your assets because I'm like you. I thought, I don't want people stealing my stuff. But what he teaches, in addition to how do you protect your merchandise from being stolen, but how do you protect your people? Because, I never thought of that whole idea of how do you systemically create a store that has asset protection in place and your people are considered an asset in the way that he looks at it. So yes, so you can go to retailbrilliance.com and take a look at all the courses and more and more every time we hear somebody say, "Oh, I never thought of that," or "I need to learn that," it's like, okay, where's there an expert? So we would love to have you put a course on merchandising on Brilliance, Michelle. We'll talk about it.
I did want to touch base because I the big topic, obviously,
Yeah,
across the board right now is
yeah,
tariffs. And
sure.
I saw on Crystal's Evolve, I think the thing was tariffs, politics, and AI. Oh my.
Yeah,
And so I mean I am interested on like how are you kind of guiding your retailers
sure.
tariff situation because it's a day-to-day situation. I don't think everyone realizes how it's going to look, but the things I've been seeing are retailers that are, the wholesaler has built it into their price already and built that in, which means your costs have gone up. But what's happening from what I can see is they're getting retailers are accepting the merchandise, and then along comes a whole other bill that's from customs and tariffs,
Yeah,
a whole another cost that I don't think any retailer expected because they thought it was all built into the price.
yeah. And so I just saw on the news that Amazon is actually putting a line item. This is the tariff. And Donald Trump is not happy about that. And this isn't about politics. But when I talk to people, so of course, part of the conversation is pricing and how do you deal with it. But to with your permission, I'd like to sort of step back from it a little bit and approach it from how do you look at it from a broad perspective. And the first thing is, what is your mindset? How are you thinking about it? And the most important thing, in my opinion, is to recognize that you have to be aware, you have to be smart, but and having a plan A and a plan B is probably a good idea, but the tendency for a lot of people is to catastrophize it,
Yeah.
right? To become so wrapped up in it. And here on Lake Michigan, we have riptides, right? And if you get caught in a riptide, the important thing to do is to not panic, but swim off to the side. And that's really kind of things are changing all the time. I'm here in Michigan. And again, today's news is Donald Trump is taking the tariffs off of certain auto parts. So, it's changing every day. And so too much future is not a good perspective. So to your listeners who are concerned about it, the first thing I want to say, if you made it through COVID, you're going to make it through this. Right. And that's really the mindset. And the second part of the mindset thing is the recognition that every time something is uncertain, every time there is a bad time, and I think we can safely say that this is a bad time, where it is on the scale of bad is
Yeah.
still up for debate. But any time that there's a bad time, it forces you to become better. To your point, you look at pricing and you say, what can I do? And all of the skills and the habits that you develop when things are uncertain, when you are under stress, these habits and these skills will serve you really, really well when things get better because things always get better. And so that's sort of the mindset piece of it. But when you start to look at it sort of more tactically, then we start to look at it from the viewpoint of focus and efficiency. And focus is doing the right thing, and efficiency is doing it the right way. And so going back to this, okay, what am I going to do to be more efficient? This is the perfect opportunity for your team. If you've got dead weight on your team, you might have been able to carry them when times are good. But if you've got dead weight on your team, now's the time to cut them loose because you want the people who are on your team to be as efficient as possible. And that sort of ties into on the floor salespeople.
Hmm.
Because right now, one of the best ways to get around price resistance is to have a skilled salesperson on the floor asking good questions, showing the right merchandise, adding on the right way. Average ticket is really a reflection of the efficiency of your on the floor salesperson. So really making sure that your team is tight, as in having the right number of people, and tight as in they're trained how to sell, and tight in that they understand how to add on and do all those things. This is how you sort of move through it. And then when you start talking about merchandise, having different price points, good, better, bests in all of your top categories. And, really sort of looking at your margins really strategically. So you may not be able to raise prices to reflect the new pricing on all of your most popular goods because people can price them online. Price comparison is real easy, but you can also go to your vendors. Our best clients are always sort of shopping the deals. This, and I never understood this when I was in retail till somebody taught me. Somebody said that exactly this. They said, Bob, your vendors have the exact same problems you have. They make bad buys. They're overstocked here. They need to clear here. And it was like, oh, that makes sense. So our best clients are always shopping for the deals. They're always looking for the deals where they can build their margins back up. And right now, with the tariffs sort of making pricing really janky, that's a technical term, by the way. You want to be able to keep your prices in line on the easily shoppable merchandise while still maintaining your margins by doing good, better, best, by bringing in closeouts and bundling them and doing all those things. Does that all make sense?
It does. I mean, the challenge is going to be there's a whole lot of high-end boutique stores that don't shop discount and don't bundle, and because
Yes.
their standard is so high that one, they won't look at it, which they
Yeah.
should. Because when we would do the show for Fred Siegel, my old boss used to drag me in every janky showroom possible, where most buyers, we buy by visual, and it's like if it
Yeah.
looks good, that's why people hire us to do wholesale gift showroom setups. Like if it looks good, your buyers are going to come in.
Yeah.
And I think that for a lot of buyers, there's a whole lot of showrooms that no one goes in because at the sight line they're looking at, it's like, there's nothing in there for me. Which that's one thing for sure, but I think a lot of vendors a lot of stores that have a higher end clientele that are bringing in things from Paris and bringing things in from all these areas, the tariffs they're going to see, I don't think that I mean, they're going to have to build them into their inventory, into their cost of goods because you can't absorb some of those costs, which
Well,
means
and this is perfect. This ties in perfectly to what I just shared. Is the first thing is yes, when times are good, you can afford to only bring in the things that you want to bring in, and you can shop the showrooms that you want to shop. It's easy to be good when times are good, but when times get tough, that's when you might, sort of not lower your standards, but go into the showrooms that you may not have gone into
Yeah.
before because you didn't need to. But now you have to be a little more aggressive in the way that you shop. Now you have to look a little harder and dig a little deeper to find things that will match your price points, match your standards for quality, but aren't just there, right? It's easy to walk into a good showroom and buy stuff, but you have to dig a little harder. When I used to go to the shows, I always contended and that I made money in the corners,
Mhm.
right? Everybody buys from the big booths when you walk in, but the corners are where, the new stores, I mean, the new vendors are, the people who may not be pricing intelligently, where you'll find those one of a kind. I mean, they're not, their prices are too low for what they're selling.
Yeah.
And, or the new brands that are hot and sexy, but they can't afford the big booth. So, to this whole idea of, these interesting times force you to start to
Get
think
creative.
outside of your normal
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
This is a perfect example of that. The other thing, and especially going back to your example of high-end women's clothing boutiques, this is where uh, having that great salesperson on the floor who knows how to make the merchandise come alive, who knows how to dress somebody so that they don't care about the price,
Yep.
know how to ask the good questions to find out, so what is this outfit for? What is the occasion? What do you do for your work in your life? What do you really need?
Yeah.
So when I teach selling, I created a term called the perfect purchase. And the perfect purchase is what's absolutely correct and perfect for that person. And so a salesperson is always thinking ahead for the customer, is asking really good questions to really get at what they really want. And when a skilled salesperson asks the right questions and gets that customer to a perfect purchase, price becomes a lot less of an issue, especially for people who can afford it, right? They want what's right, not what's
Yeah.
cheapest.
Well, I think that, I think you had touched on average ticket sales, and I talk to more retailers that don't have reports. They don't use open to buy, which, not everybody can afford to have an open to buy person, but your reporting that could tell you what your open to buy is. There's so many, and that's just on the purchases side of it. I don't know if anyone really digs into looking at what each individual salesperson's average ticket sale is. And it's like, I think that speaks volume as far as like, if you're going to look at your staff and you're going to look at like who your strong people are, as well as listen to customers that were like, hey, like I just went into the store the other day. It was so beautiful here, like so beautiful. And there's not a lot of shopping here in Oregon at
Mhm.
all. And so this one store was so well done. It's an interior decorator store. The product, her merchandising, the building, everything insane. Her employee, there was 6 people in the store. Her employee is standing behind the counter, arms crossed, just like, hi, welcome. And people are wandering around. And I said to my husband, I'm like, please tell me she's not going to stay behind the counter the whole time. And literally, people are like in the far corners of the store where there's not cameras, there's not like you could easily be shoplifting, but let alone not, you're not there, person's not on the floor. And I walked out and I was like, she never came out from behind the counter. Those are your employees that you should be looking at and listening to when your customers say, hey, I was in the store last week and Susie Q didn't help anybody. Like, I think
So,
that,
Michelle, if I had hair, I would pull it out regularly. So, I do the same thing, right? Whenever I go to a town, I shop all the independent stores, and I have in my head this thing called an engagement o-meter. You know how in the old cartoons it goes like that? And I just can't, it's so frustrating to me as the thing that you just described when you go into a store where somebody has clearly spent an enormous amount of mental energy, creative energy, money to create a store and then to have the experience fall so flat. And when as I said, we have an online sales training platform. I am an expert sales trainer. When I got into retail, if Susan was here right now, she would affirm this with a big hearty laugh. But I was a terrible merchant. But my brother Steve, who was my junior partner, and I were great salespeople. We got on the floor and made it an experience. And that idea of getting out of the floor and engaging your customers and really working hard to make sure they were happy covered up a myriad of weaknesses in display, in cleanliness. I mean, I describe the Mackinac Kite Company as a post-collegiate beach bungalow was kind of the vibe, right? But to go back to your idea of having really looking at the average sale by person. Our best merchants are all looking at sales by person. They're coaching to statistics. And so, for your listeners, I'd like all of your listeners to do this quick exercise here, because to your point, it may prompt them to start paying attention by the person. So when I do this, when I work with somebody or if I do a live program, I'll ask everyone, what's your average ticket? And so for the sake of this conversation, let's say it's $100. Now, the second question is, what's the average ticket of your best salesperson? And let's say for the sake of this conversation, it's $120. Typically, the gap is 50%.
Hmm.
If the average ticket is $100, there's somebody on their team that's doing $150. That is what we call the gap. So I was just at Crystal's event that you talked about, Evolve, and I did this exercise. And the woman, their best salesperson was 90. I mean, their average ticket was 90. Their best salesperson was 170.
Wow.
So, well, let's just go back to the example of 100 and 120. Then I say to that person, here's what I would like to suggest, that every single time that someone other than the $120 average sale person is talking to your customers, it's costing you about $20. So you're losing $20 a transaction times every transaction you're making from now until forever because you don't have skilled salespeople on the floor. And you can just see the room. I mean, I did this at the National Association of Music Merchants once, and a guy raised his hand and said, I'm missing out on, I think it was $4.5 million a year, chain of music stores, but he did the exercise. So when we talk about efficiency, or you talk about making up for problems that might arise because there's tariffs, just by saying, okay, I'm going to train my people how to sell. I'm going to look at their statistics weekly, and I'm going to look at average ticket, items per sale, and sales volume per hour, right? Just look at those statistics, and then I'm going to coach to those statistics. All of a sudden, what you're going to see is a 15 to 20, 25, even 30% increase in the average ticket from the same amount of customers.
Yeah.
And that's why we go back to good, better, best, because if the price range they're looking for is, you just have more opportunities when you merchandise that way.
Do you suggest for people do you ever suggest incentive programs to get the team because I used to, when my stores, I had two salespeople that were one girl I plucked out of an ice cream store because she was so just on fire and asking questions and I was like, oh my God, can you please come work for me? She came to work for me. And then I had Arthur was magic. This guy could sell anything.
Yeah.
But it became between the two of them this very like contentious, like competitive thing. And to the point where like the little girl was like 14 and Arthur's like 20 something. It became like where he was like now bullying her. And it was like,
Oh,
okay, we got to back off this. But, it was amazing to see for a little bit and then it wasn't. And then it was like, but do you suggest incentive programs? Because I had one and it
absolutely.
backfired, but I do know it worked.
So to go back and to answer that question, so at the Mackinac Kite Company, I instituted commissions, and it lasted for an hour, literally. I mean, I had all these college guys; they were all athletes and competitive, and they started sharking each other. I mean, literally an hour. I was like, "Time out! This is done." But then what I did was I created a bonus system that was based on team sales because I wanted my team to work together. And so, just a couple of the highlights of this. It was weekly. We bonused weekly
Wow.
because retail salespeople can't think past a week, right? If you make it monthly, they forget about it. So it was weekly. We win or we don't win. But it was also tiered. So what I did was I said before I posted the schedule, I said, what do I think we're going to do in sales next week? I looked at last year, how we were trending. What does the weather report look like? Are we going to have promotions? Do we anniversary a promotion from last year? All these things. And let's just say the number is $10,000 for a nice round number. So $10,000 would be the goal. Then if they hit goal, they got $1 an hour for every hour worked. And then if they were 10% above goal, they got $1.50 for every hour worked. 15% was, no, how did that go? A dollar was, 10% was $1, 15% was $1.50, 20% was what we called super bonus, and that was $2 an hour. And they every day when whoever checked out, they would fill out a form that showed us exactly where we were on our journey to hitting bonus or not. Michelle, that bonus program made me more doggone money because now I had something to keep people focused
Yeah.
on, right? And that was so important. Now, having said that, one of our best clients, member of our Platinum Mastermind group, Maureen Doran, she has a very, very successful woman's clothing store in suburban Philadelphia. And she swears by commission. And so she pays her people very, very well, but they make 7% of their
Wow.
sales or their real deal salary. And everybody makes more than their salary. Everybody is at the place where they're making 7%. And so that's how she pays. And I asked her, I said, isn't there sharking? And she said, this is really important to people who are considering it. She said, we all had to learn to act like adults.
Yeah. I mean, I love watching team sales, but I know that, people are driven by numbers and people are like hungry for it. But I do think that commission structure does work. And I think it gives people a goal. But more importantly, I think it helps the team understand how to get to that goal. Like I remember, there's a couple stores I work with that don't want to share the numbers with the employees, which I think is crazy. It's like,
Crazy.
how are you coming up with goals? And so, to help, this is our monthly goal, this is our weekly goal, this is our daily goal, this is our hourly goal, where, like when I have my stores, it'd be like towards the end of the night, it was like, okay, we are
Let's
like
go.
$100 away from the goal.
Let's do it.
If you do this, we'll also get pizza and
Yeah.
and every single time. But the team understanding the numbers and understanding where they needed to get to that goal also helped and gave them ownership of the store. And I think that's really important as well for your employees to feel like they're part of it and they have ownership of it because they have a stake in it.
Well, and there's not only that. If you don't share your numbers, people think they're making their own up, right? And to all the points that you made, but when I talk to people who don't share numbers, the question is why, and there's never really a good answer other than some sort of weird money beliefs. And and so if you don't share, your team has no choice but to sort of create their own fantasy, or
Or
they
not
have
care.
no.
Or not.
Right? Or they
The
or they
biggest thing is
don't
not
care.
care. Like I don't,
And
she's not going to tell us, so why am I going to bother? Like what?
and what I found is the more transparent you are, the better. One of our favorite business people is Ari Weinzweig. He is the co-founder of the Zingerman family of businesses in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and they do open book management.
Hmm.
And Ari and Zingerman's was Inc. magazine named them one of the 50 coolest places in America to work. Their culture is absolutely amazing, and it's because they share everything. And open book management is really, it was started by Jack Stack, and his the operative philosophy is to exactly to your point, people can't help us make money if they don't know how we make money. And if we teach them how we make money and we share how we're making money or where we're not making money, they have an opportunity to help us make more money.
I know one of the things, because, there's a lot of departments that make more money than others. Crystals are one. And I know one of the answers I got back was when I said, why doesn't the team, because no one would allow anyone to price the merchandise until the owner went in and looked at it. And it was like, there needs to be a formula that everybody can price, because there's stuff that's been sitting here for 3 months waiting for you to come in and price it. And it's like that's sitting money. And he was like, I don't want people to know what I'm making or what my markup is. I'm like, like it matters. Like
Right.
that's what's going to make them more money if they're on commissions. Like, why are you? But I think a lot of people get hung up in that. Like a lot
Well,
of
it
people,
is, and Michelle, it's weird money beliefs.
yeah.
There's no other way around it. It's a a parallel to that mentality is the on the floor salesperson who sells out of their own pocket. So,
What does that mean?
I'll give you an example. In the quilting, I've done a lot of work in the quilting business. I've never sewn anything in my life, but
Who struck me as that? But okay.
but I have done a lot of work in that world. And high-end sewing machines are $15,000. And selling out of your own pocket would be if somebody were to come in and sit down behind a high-end machine, but the person who is selling the machine can't afford a $15,000 machine. They sell it
Ah,
they sell down. You don't need this. I can't afford this. Therefore, me selling you this is not being fair to you. They feel out of integrity if they sell the more expensive machine. So what they start to do is they start to sell lower models, models that aren't as expensive, even if the person sitting behind the machine not only can afford, but wants the most expensive machine. Some people only want the best. And this is where the concept of the perfect purchase comes in. We had a client who had a quilting store. She's now a consultant. She's a buyer. But she said that made such a difference. The concept of the perfect purchase allowed her people who were selling down because they thought they were doing their customers a favor by selling them the model that they would buy. When they understood that the perfect purchase is what the customer wants,
yeah.
now all of a sudden they felt free to sell all the bells and whistles. So if the woman who's sitting down, I'm going to say woman because women are 90% of sewing machine sales, 95.
Like I
But if
feel
the
like
woman who is sitting
you
there,
see that.
if she wants all the bells and whistles, great. here it is. Another saying is you don't have to own a Rolex watch to sell a Rolex watch.
Yeah. I um I have to ask you about along with I think one of the other suggestions with how to offset the tariff prices because you're going to have to build them into your inventory. You can't. I think a
Yep.
lot of people are like, I think the original reaction was everyone's like, we can't raise the prices. Like everyone's going to be raising their prices. It's not going to be just you. You're not going to
Right.
be the only one on the block. But I think that there are ways to create to get people in the store in order to turn those numbers. So one of the things I always tell people are in-store events. And
Yeah.
there's so many stores like I've interviewed that are doing weekly events. And they've said it is a lot of work, but it gets people in the store that maybe never have been in the store, first time shopper, but it gets people in, it gets them excited. They're around it. You serve wine, everyone kind of loosens up and it has helped their sales immensely.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. People still want to shop.
Yes.
People still want to shop, and people still need to shop. So I'll share a quick story. So I call it the pina colada principle. And for years, I have been teaching that you are responsible for your traffic. My friend Randy Gage has a great quote. He says, "There's no shortage of money, there's just a shortage of ideas." And that is true. And so for years, I've been teaching this idea that, look, you're responsible for your traffic. Yes, if you're downtown, everybody is closed on Sunday. That doesn't mean that you need to be closed on Sunday. You have to find a way to bring people into your store on Sunday. You don't depend on other people for your traffic. You create traffic. You
Mhm.
don't wait for traffic. You proactively generate traffic. But then one of our clients, Misha Seto, she's got, I don't know, I think 9 stores in Lewis, Delaware. It's a beach town in Delaware. And when it rains, that typically or that traditionally dampened, no pun intended, foot traffic, right? And it's raining, nobody's going out and shopping. So what Misha did was whenever it started to rain, she served free pina coladas in her store. You know, the store, you like pina coladas. So that's the tie-in. And so now all the locals know, and she's got a ton of energy and her stores are fun, that if it's raining, you can go to one of Misha's stores and get a free pina colada. And so
Sure.
I have coined the term the pina colada principle, meaning there is always something you can do to drive traffic. And to your point, in-store promotions is a great way. And we're not talking about sales. Yes, having a store-wide discount can happen occasionally, but there's always something to do. I was just sharing with you Maureen Doran's story. She has an event in her store every week. She's got an annual marketing calendar every single week. She has an event and, she anniversaries most of them. She always goes back and recaps what happened, what worked, what didn't, what were the sales, do we need to do next year. So now it's just sort of on autopilot.
Mhm.
And for all of your listeners, yes, this whole idea of do something. Do something. Get
Yeah.
them in your store. And then have great salespeople to sell them something.
Dan Jablin's, I had him on a few weeks ago. He's an
Yeah.
OpenFI guy, and Dan was saying, one of the like one of his, it's a menswear thing, and it was to
Yeah.
drive traffic and sell X amount of stuff. You know, it was buy two something, get one for free. And the one for free was goods that he had been sitting on. So they bought full price goods and they felt great. They were getting something free. And it's like
Yeah.
those are the kind of promotions where you're not really knocking down the price of your regular price stuff, but there's incentive to buy X amount of stuff where, oh my God, I'm going to get this free. I've wanted this anyway. Or, make certain like where you're going in and talking like lower price goods, but making deals with your manufacturers where you get something for off price and that's your free giveaway. And then you buy
Right.
X amount and you don't have to sell the off price stuff. You can give it away as a gift with purchase. And and promoting these things through social media for those who don't want to get on social media,
Yeah.
and to be on and go live and to do stories and to do posts around these products and these events and these promotions is huge.
It's all about the hustle. And one of my big frustrations, and it sounds like a frustration that you're expressing here too, is the frustration you experience going into that beautiful store and having a terrible experience. But it's all about hustle. And I'm a big fan of hustle because that's what I mean. I started a kite store in 1983. That people thought I was selling drugs. I mean, they did. They were like, "How can anybody make a living selling kites?" Right? But it was all about the hustle.
Yeah.
And it is incredibly frustrating to me to see somebody have the gumption or the wherewithal to get a store open and to make it look good and then stop.
Yeah.
It's the field of dreams, only it's not the field of dreams. If you build it, they won't come. If now it's built, now you need to become a good marketer. So I teach this thing called the foot traffic formula. And it goes like this. First of all, you got to get new customers. There's a whole suite of tactics to get new customers. Then when they come in the store, you give them a great first experience. Then, when you give them a great first experience, they're very, very likely to sign up for your loyalty program. So now you have their contact information. And now the final part of the formula is to get those people back in your store again and again and again. And this is where, to all the things you're talking about, now they're following you on social media and you go live. Misha goes live. Misha, who I just told you about the pina colada principle, she goes live 5 days a week at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, I love the
5 days,
community.
5 days a week, and she's that kind of personality, but her team's got it all set up. She just basically walks in and becomes Misha. They give
Yeah.
her merchandise, she talks about it, a weekly email newsletter. But the whole point to your point is, get their contact information and then sell again and again and again.
Yeah, the email component is a whole other component that I think that intimidates people because a lot of people don't want to give away their email address. It's like, it's I know from my own experience, it's challenging to get it. Yet for some reason, I have no idea how we have so many emails from the website side of it or the podcast side of it, which I'm grateful for. It's always been a challenge, and I think it's a challenge for a lot of retailers. But the loyalty programs are
So this is exactly right. No, this is where a loyalty program comes in, and not in a good loyalty program. And so it becomes a non-negotiable standard that every single person who comes to the counter is asked, "Are you a member of our loyalty program?" Yes, good. Well, then let's make sure that you get credit for this. No. And then if you've got a good loyalty program with a lot of great benefits and you give them a great first experience, that's why
yeah,
it's part of the formula. Because if they have a lousy experience, they don't want to give you their email address.
nor do
You
they
have
want to come
sort of
back.
self-identified as you're going to be a pest, right? You're not, but if they have a great first experience with a skilled salesperson who knows what they're doing, who connects on a human level, and then they say, "Wow, would you like to be part of would you like to join our loyalty program?" When somebody joins your loyalty program, especially if they do it enthusiastically after a great experience, they're figuratively raising their hands and saying, "Yes, please market to me."
Yeah. Well, I think you're having that engaging employee that can sell it, because every single time I've gone into like Barnes and Noble or some of the other places that have it, it's this forced conversation that the employee has to say it, and it comes out so awkward and so uncomfortable, and then it makes me uncomfortable. I'm like, no, I'm good, thanks so much. But I think that person, that's that salesperson that's lovely and is taking you through the sale from the beginning to the end, and you feel like they're your friend, and there's that energy. You're like,
It's
yes,
that energy.
absolutely. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
energy creates energy.
going back to what you were just sharing, like at a Barnes and Noble or at a big box store. So what they haven't done, if a team member, if an employee is not enthusiastically promoting your loyalty program, it means that they don't believe in it.
Or
right?
they've turned down so many times, they just feel like they're shot down. It's like you can kind of see
Perhaps,
that like
yeah,
beaten dog look sometimes.
yeah.
I got written up because I didn't offer it last time.
It's a non-negotiable standard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta do it. Yeah, I know I'm probably being secret shopped. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
But I think that having that employee that has energy and is engaging, I think that is the person that will sell that loyalty program. And I always say if that person's that engaging, have him train the other employees because
right.
no one no one follows anybody better than an employee following another employee that they like.
So I love what you're saying, but if, with your permission, I'm going to add to it
Yeah.
because here's the problem with an employee training another employee. Michelle, did you ever play that telephone game around the campfire?
Yes.
You know, where by the time it gets around, it's no
I was
longer.
always the elaborator.
Yeah, that's right. The elaborator. So, one of the things that we have on Brilliance is the ability to create a training program for your business and have it on the platform. And this is what we learned at the Mackinac Kite Company, is it has to be video. But now it's so easy. You know, it literally, a training program, a good training program is the owner taking everything that's in their head and putting it on a camera and then putting it on a platform where there's quizzes. And when you do that, everybody is getting the same information the same way from the same person with the same passion rather than, a haphazard training program. Our best clients, so one of our clients has got eight pet stores in the Chicagoland area. They have 60 hours of training on Brilliance. 60. So their team members aren't even allowed on the floor by themselves
That is
till they've
brilliant.
till they've completed, I think, 30 hours of training. That's how you give your customers that kind of
Where
experience.
it's the same experience across the board as it should be
Right,
with each employee. When I refer like an employee training another employee, I had great success with my selling people that were so high energy because what would happen is the employee would ask, well, this happened to me, how do you handle that? And they would
right,
come back with amazing answers. Oh, this is how I turn it around, or this is, and they were often things that were not in our training manual that I didn't have the answer to because these guys were much closer to selling than I was. But I think
right.
that having that library of videos to reference and having the employee have to go through it as a training. I mean, Disneyland does it. Like all the big companies do this that have that amazing experience, and the experience is the same from every person you go down the line has that same amazing energy, same answers, same way of treating you, same hand to glove to spoon feed you kind of experience. That's what I
Yeah.
had in my stores at Fred's.
And that's the goal right now for most of your listeners are brick and mortar retailers. And for independent brick and mortar retailers right now, the only true unassailable competitive advantage is the customer experience.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, you can't play the price game, you can't play the assortment game. The only game that can truly be played, a true competitive advantage, is when somebody comes into your store that when they leave, they feel so good about you
Yep.
and how they were treated. This whole idea of the perfect purchase, a skilled salesperson, really digging into what they really want, a perfect purchase, a big brand. The big box stores and the department stores are not doing it at all. I mean, they've fallen off. They don't do it. They're looking at payroll as a cost, not an investment in the
Yes.
customer
Yes.
experience. An online brand can't do it. They can try to duplicate a human experience, but the human, the face to face, you come into my store, I'm going to make you feel good, baby. And when you leave, you're going to tell all your friends about it. And it really is systemic. It's about the owner having the commitment to the customer experience,
Yeah.
and then having the skills, recruiting is a skill, hiring is a skill, training is a skill, coaching is a skill, just staying relentlessly focused on having a team that delivers that kind of experience. That's the competitive advantage.
I love that. I know we're heading into an hour, but I wanted to ask you, do you have any book recommendations that you could suggest to our listeners?
Yes. So for this is a book for all entrepreneurs, and it's The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy.
Perfect. And then I know last we talked, you were working on a book.
Yeah.
Is that coming along?
Well, so that's a great question. So I got it done. And my wife, Susan, not only is an avid reader, but her genius is organizing information. And I got it done, 50,000 words, the whole thing. And I gave it to her. And she came back and said, Bob, it's well written. There's a lot of great ideas, but it's just kind of an idea salad.
Hmm.
There's no pull through. So we were we're building this brilliance. And so, interesting. So, in other words, that's a long answer to right now it's sitting on the shelf, but it will come off the shelf, and it will become something that sometime in the future here.
Well, you're kind of a busy guy and you got your hands in a lot of pots. So, I
Yeah.
mean, there's something that's going to give at some point. So,
Well, that's exactly what happened. I mean, I got up at 6 o'clock every morning and wrote, I mean, I sort of pour everything that's in my head. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to put my name on it. I'm not going to publish it if I didn't think. Now, Susan and I together, wrote this book a long, long, long time ago. And when I think it was 2006, but it still holds up. So if your listeners marketing your retail store in the internet age, that was when the internet was still a
interweb.
fairly new thing. But all the things that we're kind of talking about here, all of these very, very human, analog
Hmm.
marketing things, like we just said, how to use gift certificates to drive traffic and how to get new customers, how to create in a wonderful, wonderful loyalty program that's super easy to implement. So if your listeners are interested in sort of understanding how I think about marketing, like I said, the book is old, but when I looked at it recently, it was like, man, this thing really, really holds up. So I'd encourage them, and it's still in print, so you can get it from Amazon.
We'll make sure we have that link
Okay, thank
in
you.
the show notes. Okay, so last question is
Sure.
how, with everything that you're doing, how do you stay inspired?
I stay inspired by talking to retailers. When I talk to someone and they're making a difference in the world, or when I talk to someone and they're doing something fun and interesting, it keeps me inspired. Today, I just had a conversation with someone who was thinking about opening a second store. And this person already has a pretty wonderful life. And the question was, do you really want to open another store? Or do you want to do something bigger with your life?
Hmm.
And that was the question that needed to be asked of this person. And so I created a model called the retailer's journey, and it goes from shopkeeper when you don't really know what you're doing, right? When you're just sort of floundering, to retail pro, where you know where you're doing, your store's running on rails. And then the third part of this journey is this thing that I call entrepreneur as artist, where you take all of the skills that you've learned and you apply them someplace else. You're the entrepreneur as artist, right? This podcast is Michelle, entrepreneur as artist. And for this person, when I suggested that there might be something bigger for her than another store, she said, "Oh, I just got tingles." It's like, perfect. That is the universe telling you that that's the right decision.
Yeah,
That's
sometimes
inspiring to
bigger
me.
is not better. And I wish I took my own advice when I say that out loud, because when I had my one single store at Fred Siegel Comfort, it was great. And then ego got in the way. I mean, mind you, I was 27. I'm 59 now. So, then the second one, it was like that was a little bit ego, but it was a smaller space. When this third section came up, it was 3,000 additional square feet. And that's where ego kicked in. And it was like, oh my gosh, it wasn't thinking about what business would look like later down the line. It was like, look how amazing I can make it look. Look at all the lines I can. I mean, it was a whole other thought process. Excuse my
Yeah,
thanks. But I think that bigger is not always better. And I
it's
think that
not.
especially when you get to an age where it's like, do you like how long do you want to be doing this grind? If you're a working owner and you're in your store every day, like
Yeah.
does life look like after? And what else is there to do? Keep your store, and what else can you do? I think
And it's
that's great
interesting
advice.
because, we have a high-end group called the Platinum Mastermind Group. That's our highest level group. And, it's application and invitation only. And one of the interesting things that always happens is, it's for already successful retailers, but it's interesting and rewarding to me. This is another thing that inspires is to see people sort of go from achievement, 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 achievement. And we all love achievement. We're entrepreneurs to achievement with lifestyle.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden they go from, oh, I'm going to open more stores to, oh, I'm going to travel more. I'm going to spend more time. But that whole idea of backing off of grind, grind, grind to be
Yeah.
bigger, better, and then all of a sudden saying, okay, I'm good. I can do other things with my life, and that's rewarding in and of itself.
I
That's
think one
kind
of
of a
my
fun thing.
favorite sayings is wearing your tiredness on your sleeve is not a badge. I think that
That's a
so many of us
that's
in
a
this
great
industry, it's like,
quote.
oh my God, I'm so tired. I've been doing this, but everything's great. Like, and it's like, it's not.
It's not.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I almost grew my when I was in retail, I almost grew the Mackinac Kite Company broke twice.
oh,
And, I mean, self-induced, I mean,
ego.
they were all sins of ego.
Yeah, it's amazing what will happen.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time with me today. Tell everyone where they can find you.
WhizBang, www.whizbang, there's an H in whizbangtraining.com. Retailbrilliance.com is our new educational platform. If you want to get in touch with me personally, it's bob.negen, Negen, backwards and forwards the same way at whizbangtraining.com. I'd love to hear from any of your listeners.
Facebook, Instagram.
Oh yeah, Facebook WhizBang. No, we have a Facebook group called WhizBang Retailers.
I'm
It's
on it.
relentlessly positive. There's a lot of great stuff, and WhizBang Training is on Instagram also. So,
Bob, thank you so much. I really appreciate
Michelle, it's my pleasure. I really enjoy talking to you.
it too.